The high-stakes game of royal chicken is finally over, and Prince Andrew is the one who blinked. For years, the Duke of York sat behind the fortified walls of Royal Lodge, convinced he was untouchable, but the reality of a modern, cash-strapped monarchy has finally caught up with him. King Charles has officially pulled the plug. The private security team is gone, the allowance has been slashed to zero, and the removal vans have finally rolled through the gates of the 30-room Windsor mansion. This isn't just a change of address, it is the total messy collapse of the York household. A domestic empire built on borrowed time, questionable money, and an ego that refused to acknowledge the changing of the guard. The eviction notice didn't come in an envelope, it came in the form of a financial squeeze so tight it left Andrew with no heir. The king simply stopped the bleeding of royal funds that had been propping up his younger brother's lifestyle for decades. Without that sovereign lifeline, Andrew found himself staring down the barrel of a lease trap he couldn't escape. The terms of his 75-year lease on Royal Lodge required him to pay for all repairs and renovations. The bill for the crumbling masonry and the leaking roof has now reportedly topped £7.5 million. Andrew, a man with no official income and a reputation that has made him radioactive to the private sector, simply doesn't have the cash. The king offered him a choice: find the millions to fix the palace or pack your bags. The arrival of the unmarked white lorries this week tells us exactly how that math worked out. Behind those grand walls, the life Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson lived was far from the polished image of royal duty. New accounts from former staff describe a household ruled by fear, characterized by a demand for absolute control that bordered on the pathological. The centerpiece of this psychological profile is what insiders have dubbed the teddy bear protocol. Most adults might keep a memento or two, but Andrew reportedly owned 72 stuffed toys, all dressed in uniforms and sailor suits. Every morning, staff were required to arrange them on his bed in a precise pre-approved order, from the largest to the smallest. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a mandate. A laminated diagram was kept on the bedside table, showing exactly where every bear had to go, resembling a battlefield layout more than a bedroom routine. If a single bear was out of place, or if an ear was tilted at the wrong angle, the staff would face a temper tantrum that could be heard through the thick stone walls of the lodge. This obsession with his toys wasn't just a quirky habit, it was a window into a man who felt the world was slipping away and was desperate to control the one thing he still had power over: his servants. Former maids have described Andrew as short-tempered, rude, and fundamentally entitled. Staff were terrified to draw a curtain too tightly or set a breakfast tray slightly off-center for fear of triggering an angry response. One former aide remarked that you could hear the prince shouting before you even saw him. He didn't view his employees as professionals. He treated them as if they were beneath him, there to serve but never to speak. It was a military-style operation where the rules were stricter than anywhere else in the royal fold, all to satisfy the whims of a man who had lost his titles, his honours, and his dignity, but still wanted his shoes lined up with surgical precision. While Andrew was obsessing over his teddy bears, the financial shadow over the household was growing darker. Sarah Ferguson, the woman who has spent 30 years trying to reinvent herself while clinging to the royal brand, was facing her own reckoning. The bad Fergie persona she once joked about became a liability that the palace could no longer ignore. Her debts have reportedly hit the £5 million mark, a staggering sum for someone who hasn't been a working royal since the 90s. But the most damning evidence of the household's decay is found in the paper trail of unpaid wages. An email from 2011 recently resurfaced, sent by her assistant Johnny O'Sullivan, pleading for nearly $60,000 in back pay. O'Sullivan described his situation as one of real hardship, struggling to pay for his MBA at Columbia while the Yorks lived in luxury. The bailout for that specific debt didn't come from the Yorks' own pockets, it came from Jeffrey Epstein. The convicted offender reportedly stepped in to pay £15,000 to settle the O'Sullivan matter, a transaction that Ferguson later called a gigantic error of judgment. But the record suggests it was more than a one-time mistake. Epstein reportedly provided Ferguson with financial support for roughly 15 years, a cozy arrangement that only ended when he got tired of her constant requests for cash. This wasn't just about bad luck, it was about a lifestyle that the Yorks felt entitled to but couldn't afford. From the infamous cash for access scandal, where Ferguson was caught on camera offering to sell access to Andrew for £500,000, to her legal troubles in Turkey after filming a documentary in an orphanage under false pretenses, the pattern of behaviour is clear. They believed the rules that applied to everyone else simply didn't apply to them. Even their home sales were tainted by suspicion. In 2010, Andrew sold his Sunning Hill Park mansion for £15 million, which was £3 million above the asking price. The buyer was Timur Kulibayev, the son-in-law of Kazakhstan's then president. The massive overpayment raised eyebrows from London to Astana, with many questioning if the £3 million bonus was a standard real estate deal or an indirect way of buying royal influence. Andrew's team denied any wrongdoing, but the optics were disastrous. It added to a reputation of a prince for hire, a man who earned the nickname Air Miles Andy for his frequent use of private jets and helicopters at public expense while allegedly entertaining dozens of women on trips to Thailand and Hong Kong. The fallout from the Epstein connection and the subsequent millions paid to settle a civil case with Virginia Giuffre was the final blow to the York brand. Andrew lost his military titles, his royal patronages, and his right to be called His Royal Highness. But perhaps the most significant change is the end of the York marriage. Again, for 2 decades, Andrew and Sarah lived together at Royal Lodge in a bizarre post-divorce arrangement that confused the public and frustrated the palace. They presented a united front, but as the walls of the lodge close in, that front has fractured. For the first time in 20 years, they are living apart. Andrew is heading to a modest farmhouse on the Sandringham estate, a property far smaller and far more isolated, where his signal will be monitored and his every move scrutinized by the Crown. Sarah, meanwhile, is reportedly looking for her own property in Windsor, finally forced to establish a life that doesn't rely on sharing a roof with her ex-husband. Even their daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, have seen the writing on the wall. They haven't just distanced themselves from the scandals, they have practically fled the country. To save their own brands and protect their young families from the toxic cloud hanging over their parents, the sisters have established lives abroad. Eugenie is spending her time in Portugal, while Beatrice divides her time between the United States and Europe. They are the collateral damage of a parental legacy built on excess and arrogance, and their retreat is a clear signal that the House of York has no future in the new reign of King Charles. As the last of the boxes are loaded onto the removal vans, the image of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor moving to a farmhouse in Norfolk is the ultimate picture of a fall from grace. He is a man stripped of his status, his security, and his grand stage, left with nothing but his memories and his 72 teddy bears. The king has successfully streamlined the monarchy, and in doing so, he has surgically removed the most problematic branch of the family tree. The siege of Royal Lodge is over, the Yorks are out, the money is gone, and the era of royal entitlement has officially come to a grinding, quiet halt in a modest farmhouse far from the corridors of power.